Hey everyone, this is the first video in a new series that I'm doing called How I Made This, or HIMT for short. It's an excuse for me to get started on the stuff I want to make, record the process, and then show you guys what I did, which I hope you find interesting. If you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, you've probably already seen this, but subscribe if you want to see more tutorial shorts, story times, and skits, which I'm going to be making for my channel soon. So first of all, I started out with a few sketches. I was inspired by the look of Adventure Time for both the character and the background, which I'll talk about a bit later. As I wanted the character to bob up and down and look as though they were floating, I knew there was going to be a lot of secondary movement in the hair, the arms holding the book, the hem of the robe, and the legs. Since animation takes such a long time anyway, I knew that to make the process quicker, I could keep the body a still frame and then animate everything else on individual layers. Later, once that was all done, I could then use the Keyframer tool to get the up and down movement before putting the background and the character together. There were also a few other things I did to save some time. The first was that I only animated one leg, which after it was coloured I could then duplicate and move beneath everything else. The second was to use a simple trick to animating the hem of the robe. So to make it look like it's fluttering in the breeze, I drew a line of where the hem would be if the robe was still, and then on a new layer animated circles moving along the line in a loop. To start off, I'd follow the green line until I reached a circle, follow its curve, and then go back to the green line and then repeat. I played it through a couple of times and used the light table tool to make sure that the loop was smooth and adjusted where needed. The third time-saving thing was using a feature in the light table tool to help me animate the arms. I'd only recently started using this, but it's really useful for keeping your drawings more consistent and checking proportions. If I click this button here, it will allow me to move the preview of my last frame as it appears in the light table tool. I can arrange it anywhere I like, and it won't affect the previous frame, as clicking the X will turn it off and put the preview of the frame back into place. Once I had a rough animated loop ready, I copied the clip and experimented with the Keyframer tool in the FX stack to use as a reference for later. I then went back into the first clip and animated the beard. After that, I started lining. As I cleaned up my animation, I closed any gaps I found and merged layers together to make the colouring easier. After that, it was one last check before I started colouring using the CTG layers, which I've been using more and more lately, since it's a lot quicker than doing it by hand. Once I'm done with them, I make sure to right click on the layer and select Make Anim, so my laptop doesn't struggle quite so much with rendering and playing everything through. Going into the Project tab, I duplicated the clip, merged all the layers aside from the hat, and used the Keyframer tool again to animate the up and down motion, and made sure it matched the movement of the beard. I animated the hat to bounce in time with the keyframes, and after playing it through a few times, I decided I was happy and moved on to the background. For the background, I made a new project at 5760 wide by 1080 pixels tall. This is so that I could use the multiplane camera and pan across the background as the character animation looped. I sketched out my idea, deciding to go for a cave with stalactites hanging from the ceiling, rocks, a fallen pillar, markings on the walls, and then some skulls for good measure. I used a black ground brush, size option set to constant at 3 points in size, and began the line work, keeping each part of the background on separate layers. Using a deep purple as a base, I made new layers, and to make sure that the colours match well with the character, I added a frame from the character animation on a new layer to check. I also added some smoke/fog into the background using my cloud brush, but left it out in the final scene since it looked a little too cluttered. I experimented with texture and used the stencil function to help add shadows. Once that was done, I renamed everything, merged the line and colour layers for each section, and made a new project at 1920 by 1080 pixels. And I then added a multiplane camera to the FX stack. The way I arranged everything in this was slightly different to how I've done it before. I used 2 multiplane cameras and a keyframer to put this all together. The first multiplane camera was for the back layers of the cave wall, the orange rock, and the pillars. After that, I copied my character animation onto a new layer above and used the Keyframer tool to animate the character coming into the screen from the right. I made them hover in the centre of the screen and then exit to the left at the end. After I was happy with that, I used my second multiplane camera and made a new layer, adding in the rest of my background so that they would be above the character. I positioned the planes closer to the camera so they'd be larger and move faster to give the animation more depth. I'll definitely be doing a lot more with this character for tutorials and maybe a short or something. They don't have a name yet, so maybe put some suggestions down in the comments and I'll pick one I like. I hope you liked this video, subscribe if you want to see more stuff, or request things down in the comments and I'll add them to my list. As always, thank you for watching and I'll be back with another video real soon.